As we talked about how the different dynamic currently for Stephens, mentioned that she finished actually yesterday morning. It was closer to 1 a.m. on Thursday than it was to when they got underway closer to midnight on Wednesday. And the night versus day scenario is a stark difference, obviously.
And it's interesting because the nighttime match really helped Sloane Stephens. The ball it was a little heavy. The ball kind of sat there for her. She struck the ball much better than she did during the day a couple of days ago. Seemed to have more time, seemed to just was much more comfortable. And a lot of that, of course, also has to do with nerves. I think got that opening round got the nerves out.
And a strong hold for Stephens as she gets on the board first, dropping a single point on serve. So after getting to her first semifinal, she bettered that at Eastbourne, getting to the last day against Elena Vesnina, rose from 41 to 25 in the world. A semifinalist to start the North American hard court swing in Stanford. So the deep pushes and draws really starting to pile up for Hampton. And that's a good thing for her confidence. She's been a bit shaky since that Stanford Final Four appearance. Lost in the opening round in Toronto to Suarez Navarro, and in the second round in Cincinnati to Stosur, but certainly playing back at a high level to get herself to this third round encounter.
But then you look at that and you say, well, they're both top 20 players, Stosur and Suarez Navarro's in that area. So those are not bad losses, not hang your head losses. And that's just a heavy forehand from Sloane Stephens. And as you watch her, you just marvel at the ease of her power. It's just natural power, and gave herself a wonderful margin of error over the net
to get to the last 8 in New Haven. Point away from a perfect 3-0 start.
Sloane got herself back in the court with some great defense, and she, once again, you talk about the natural ability in terms of her shot making, that she has that easy power. Well, the movement is the same thing. She's just always seems to be there, and Jamie Hampton has got to be as aggressive as she was that last point. And there Sloane coming in, but not on her own terms and not as comfortable.
Hampton with her first chance at a break point.
When you get in trouble, and you think about careers that have the potential to be spectacular, you need to be able to get yourself out of trouble with a big serve, and you saw Stephens do it right there.
Well, she wasn't helped out earlier on a net court shot that stayed on her side. This time Hampton able to get enough on it to get it to jump over to Stephens' side.
And she was looking for the wide one there. The previous point in the ad court, the wide one got her. There she cut that off.
And breaks back. Consecutive breaks puts us back on serve in the opening set. Opening minutes of the third round encounter between two Americans, Hampton and Stephens. Instead of finding her way to 2-all, she's forced to deuce. And now facing break point. It is pretty windy. There is a gust coming in on this Friday. Though Mother Nature has done well to provide sunny skies and relatively clear overhead, there is a lot of wind blowing. We've seen Hampton have a little difficulty in controlling her ball toss from both ends now.
And when it gets windy, the higher the toss, the more that can go wrong.
And another break, and at least for the moment, Stephens.
What a way to get out of trouble. And you watch some of these points and you see that Hampton's power zone, she's most comfortable waist high, about waist high. She really doesn't like balls as much at her shoulders, where Stephens is more comfortable with that.
Another serve perfectly placed high above the shoulders to the backhand side of Hampton. And Stephens marches to a 4-1 start. And long and in a whole lot of trouble. Playing in the shadows and sort of coming around and catching people by surprise. It doesn't happen anymore for Hampton. And Stephens has not taken this encounter lightly as she looks to move to 5-1. She has had break points in each of Hampton's service games. And now she has broken Jamie Hampton in all 3 of her service games. So a 5-1 lead.
And even the backhand, where Hampton just hitting very flat. And when you hit that flat, and sometimes you can hit through the wind with it, or other times you just have trouble controlling the ball. That one she hit through.
That's a well-constructed point and a good response to being broken. She knows she herself, Jamie Hampton, has had break points in each of Sloane's last 2 service games, so she can put the pressure on. Problem has been being able to convert in the last game. Stephens able to race 3 break points from love 40 to hold.
Oh, the nice 1-2 punch, the big serve, and love the margin of error she gave her on that gave herself on that second ball. Good serve, and then doesn't go for the line, but gives herself plenty of margin, but enough to hit the clean winner.
Well, Stephens will stop play. She definitely thought that was long. Almost decided to re-engage in the point, but elects to go to the electronic review. It'll be our first challenge of this opening set. And here is the official mark. And, ooh, it was close. Close enough to find paint, and Stephens will lose the point. So she'll lose a challenge, more importantly the point, and she'll be facing break point for the 3rd consecutive game as Hampton tries to fight to continue the set.
And up 5-1, you can still smile when, even though you're going down break point.
Good point.
Got a little margin. Hampton set that point up beautifully. We saw her striking some nice cross-court backhands, use a little angle, opened up the line, just going for just that bit too much.
Just got caught up, and she tried to do something that seemed a little more difficult than necessary. Hampton, she really tried to cut it long and deep and misses the mark. This just threw off her rhythm for a moment. Still, again, a nod to the athleticism of Sloane Stephens and the feeling that she had to do a whole lot more with it than necessary. It costs her because she's facing set point. And Sloane Stephens finishes things off in the opening set at exactly the 30-minute mark and feels good about her chances to move through the round of 16. But she's in desperate need of a hold to start this set is Hampton.
And I like that. I like the way she's thinking there. She knows she's in trouble, knows she needs to do something a little different. Look how she stays down. She recognizes that Sloane is off balance and then just comes right in, and that's such a pretty volley.
After the server held the first 8 points of this set, Hampton under duress once more. Can't win a point on her serve to get to love 40. Fourth time Jamie Hampton is broken, and that's going to give Sloane Stephens the upper hand. Already up a set, she's now up a break in the 3rd round. Familiar with your game? You're there a little more often. It's harder to get those extra points to push yourself up further the chain. But Stephens has done that, and she's done that with some solid victories this year. She's picked up 2 top 5 wins that have stood out as most impressive.
She ended the Sharapova-Connors relationship in,
before
in
it
the blink of an
started,
eye.
really.
Yes.
You're absolutely right. That was one of the 2 in Cincinnati a couple weeks ago. Sharapova's first match since Wimbledon. Partnered with Jimmy Connors as her coach, and she promptly sent Maria packing. In a 3-set victory, coming back from a set down, seemed like a couple hours later, really a couple days later, Sharapova told Connors, "We're done."
You just saw Jamie Hampton just kind of chip that forehand return, just getting it back in the court, because she is just struggling to find the range at all on that side. At the moment, just not a good matchup for her.
And another hold for Stephens. She drops a point though. Uh-oh. She wasn't perfect as she was in her opening service hold. She's won 8 of 9 points in the set. Many ways to get information about the US Open. We invite you to try any and all.
This is why Sloane Stephens is so good and so difficult to play. You see a point like that, and Hampton had taken the initiative. She was on the offensive, but Stephens, with that speed, just got herself right back in the point, and Jamie had to start it all over again, and then once again, an unforced error, her 24th. I mean, that's how well she has to hit the ball right there to really make any sort of impact on Stephens. Anything else, Sloane is just running down, and she, at the moment.
That was just the second win by Sloane Stephens over a top 5 opponent, the other coming very early in the year, as most of you remember. If you watched that matchup between Sloane Stephens and Serena Williams in the quarterfinals of the Australian Open. Three games away, Sloane Stephens, from a potential encounter in the round of 16 with world number 1 Serena Williams. It was Williams who got the better of Stephens in Brisbane to start the year in their quarterfinal matchup, winning in straight sets. And then it was the quarterfinals at the Australian Open that Stephens was able to get past Williams, coming back from a set down to shock everyone, take out the then world number 3 before losing in the semifinals to then world number 1 Victoria Azarenka. There had been a lot of talk about Stephens and her potential, but when she was able to get across the line against Serena Williams at the first major in Melbourne, people really sat up and said, whoa, wait a minute. Take a look at the challenge.
And that's in. And life became a whole different ball game for Sloane Stephens. Winning that match over Serena, the attention, the publicity, life changed in an instant for her, and she's learning to navigate this new world of hers.
And still learning to navigate, and that was a big learning lesson in the semifinals of the Australian against Azarenka. Remember the long timeout, the delay as Azarenka left the court, had to go back to the locker room. Stephens just sat there in her chair for what seemed like an interminable amount of time, more than 10 minutes. Kind of cooled off a bit. And there are a lot of lessons to be learned now that you're right inside that sphere, that elite area that is the top 20.
And boy, did that match with Azarenka, there's just been, was so much talk, still talk about that rule, that injury timeout rule, and when can you take that break, and it was highly questionable timing. And this game right here, this is a critical game for both players. Obviously more so for Hampton to try to get that break back, but if Stephens can, once you get that break, you consolidate that break of serve. You can breathe a little easier. This is a tight game. Hampton's fighting for her life here.
fighting hard. She'll get to break point.
Sometimes when you're feeling desperate, you can play some of your best tennis.
Well, she has to impose herself upon Stephens. She's down a break. Has not served particularly well herself, though she did hold in her last service game to cut the lead to 1. But you're right, it is crucial, and it's interesting to watch the body language of both in this moment. As Hampton's got the shoulders back, feeling a bit more comfortable. Stephens has a look of dismay.
Well, it's
how did I let that go? It was 40-15.
Yep, it's all about experience, and this is the time, you know, you're up the set, you're up the break, your opponent's making so many errors, but in the back of your mind, you got to know that this is going to be her, this is the time that she's going to make her push, and that's when you, as the player in the lead, you've got to put your foot on that accelerator and not let up, and she just let up that slight bit, and Hampton raised the level of her play. Well, that's just wonderful movement from Sloane Stephens. Very calmly gets to this ball and just flicks the wrist and gets this angle. And you're right, I mean, now, you know, Hampton can puff that chest out a little bit. She can say, you know,
she's got the strut now.
I'm feeling pretty good about myself.
I think the kids call it swagger. She's starting to feel a little more comfortable, a little more confident. Able to muster up some points here that's giving Stephens some problems. Just has to be careful.
When you watch Jamie Hampton play some of these points, you still see that she is still a work in progress. She puts so many good points together, but then it's a shot like that. It's just not all completely together, but it's getting there.
And deflating to know you were in control of the point and then just can't convert. Break point for Stephens to put herself back to the lead. Back-to-back breaks put Sloane Stephens to 4-3 in set number 2, already up a set. A couple of points just getting away, unable to hold serve, broken for a 5th time today. Hoping she can return the favor a 2nd time to Stephens in this set. Otherwise, Stephens is inching that much closer to the round of 16 in all 4 majors in 2013.
When you see these types of results from Sloane Stephens, how well she plays in the majors, you know that this is a player that's made for the limelight. That this is, you know, you either want it or you don't, and clearly she likes it, and that is so important. That's a well-constructed point from Hampton, and unfortunately for her, those have just been too few and far between. Certainly has that capacity, but Stephens hasn't allowed it.
And Stephens just allowing Hampton to hang around a bit longer. And she could have put her foot down, really snuffed out any threat. Second double fault.
And when you hit the ball flat like Hampton does, that means you're dangerous. And as we've said, she's made so many unforced errors, but she's also capable of just putting several good points together. And she's in this match, she's just a couple of putting a few good points together from really making it a match.
Just so tough to deal with when she's sort of in that neutral position of the court and able to find a way to hit that inside-out forehand and get some angle. It just gives Hampton pause. Not sure if she's going to go up the line, cross court. Stephens with her 12th winner, 7 coming from the forehand. And she has a 5-3 lead. 1 game from making it to the round of 16. She has excelled Sloane Stephens at majors this year. She is 14-3 overall, including here at the US Open at the 4 majors this year. She's 17-15 everywhere else. So she has really risen to the occasion in the 4 biggest tournaments of the year, and now she is a breakaway from moving through. Hampton serving to stay alive in the 2013 US Open.
Just forcing things, just, we said, just not been able to just put it together. String these points together. The wind, I think it's the wind, it's the higher bounce, and it's also the opponent who's playing well enough, who's recognized, Sloane has recognized that her opponent across the net is making a lot of unforced errors. So she herself has never been forced to take high risk in this match.
Yeah, it's been a struggle. Hampton to control her ground strokes, her 33rd unforced error compared to 14 from Stephens. It's more than half of Stephens' points coming from the gifts of Hampton. And 3 gifts set Stephens up for triple match point. A real collapse here while serving to stay in the tournament. And Hampton up against it.
Well, that's a way to save a match point.
Just as she drew it up in her mind. Now she hangs in there for 1. Hampton still in a whole heap of trouble. And that'll do it. The 4th meeting between Sloane Stephens and Jamie Hampton results in a straight sets victory as the 15th seed takes out her fellow American 6-1, 6-3. And Sloane Stephens is into the round of 16. And it continues the trend